The lie she lived. Lyra was not like humans. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes were dark like space, and her world floated far away from Earth. She lived on a planet called Zirel, where the skies were green and the trees hummed at night. Since she was a child, Lyra had been taught one thing: humans are monsters. At school, teachers showed them images: tall, angry humans burning planets, hurting other species, and building machines of death. They told stories of human cruelty, how they took what they wanted and destroyed everything else. Her parents warned her every night, never go near a human, never trust one. They smile with knives behind their teeth. Lyra believed it. She had no reason to doubt it. Every book, every broadcast, every law said the same. Humans were the reason for ancient wars. They were the reason Zirel stayed hidden behind shields and silence. But deep inside her heart, Lyra felt something strange. A question. If humans are monsters, she once asked her teacher, why do they build hospitals? Why do some alien planets work with them? The room fell silent. Her teacher's eyes narrowed. Because they were forced. Humans took over their minds. That's what monsters do. After that day, no one spoke to Lyra for weeks. She learned to stay quiet, to nod, smile, and hide the fire inside her, but the question never left her. Years passed. Lyra grew up and joined the Science Academy. She worked with machines and stars. Her mind was sharp, her hands steady. One day, her commander called her in. You have been chosen, he said, for the interspecies research mission, to the edge of human space. Her heart stopped. Her breath caught. To human space? She asked. Yes, the commander said. We need to understand their movements, their power. You will observe and return. Do not make contact unless needed. Lyra nodded. Her hands trembled, but her eyes shone with something new. Fear and curiosity. The night before her departure, Lyra visited the ancient halls of wisdom. She walked among the statues of Zirel's past leaders. The air was cold quiet. An old figure stood in the shadows, bent, gray, eyes like cracked glass. You go to the humans, the figure said softly. Lyra turned. How do you know? I see things others don't, the figure whispered. They told you humans are monsters. Lyra nodded. They've always said that. The old one leaned closer. They are wrong. The truth is far worse. A chill ran down Lyra's spine. What do you mean? But the figure had already turned and vanished into the shadows. The next morning, Lyra boarded her ship. It was small, silent, and fast. The journey to the human border took only a few hours, but to Lyra, it felt like years. She stared at the stars, her thoughts loud inside her head. Monsters, she repeated to herself. But what if they're not? As her ship approached the human station, she saw it for the first time. Not a weapon, but a glowing platform with ships coming and going. Peaceful quiet. Her heart beat faster. Her hand shook. The docking system activated. A soft voice came through her comms. Welcome, Zirel Scout. Permission granted to land. It was a human voice, calm, warm. Lyra stepped out of her ship slowly. Her feet touched the metal floor. The air was different. It smelled like metal and rain. A human stood there waiting. He was tall, older, with silver hair and kind eyes. He smiled. You must be Lyra. I'm Captain Reyes. You're safe here. Safe? That word felt strange in her ears. Lyra looked around. She saw other aliens walking freely. No chains, no guards. Some were laughing, some were working beside humans. This wasn't what she was told. Captain Reyes walked beside her. Don't worry, we're not the monsters you were told about. Lyra blinked. Had he read her mind? Come, he said. Let me show you the station. As they walked, Lyra saw machines growing food, robots repairing walls, humans teaching alien children. Every step shook the lies she had grown up with. But deep, inside, another fear was growing. If this was a lie, what else had been hidden from her? That night she couldn't sleep. She opened her bag and took out her secret tool, a signal reader. It beeped softly. She hacked into the station's map files. One room was locked. Restricted? Why? She copied the location to her device. The next morning, while others slept, she walked. Silently through the halls, she found the door, placed her scanner. Click, it opened, she stepped in, and froze. On the walls were maps, charts, pictures of alien planets, including her own, and next to each planet, an Earth flag. Her blood ran cold. Did they conquer us all? She whispered. Behind her, the door shut quietly, and a new voice said, "You were never supposed to see this." She met a human for the first time, and it changed everything. Lyra stood frozen inside the dark room. Blue screens flickered softly. Maps of alien worlds glowed on the walls, and every one of them had something in common. An Earth flag marked at the corner. Her heart raced. "What is this?" she whispered. These weren't war maps. There were no red zones, no battle plans. Instead, each screen showed progress charts, healing rates, school growth, energy levels, peace ratings. It didn't look like a plan of invasion. It looked like help. But why hide it? Before she could dig deeper, a voice echoed behind her. "You were never supposed to see this." Lyra spun around fast. Her hand reached for the small shock device on her belt. Captain Reyes stood at the door, calm but serious. "This section is restricted," he said, walking in slowly. "You could be arrested for trespassing." "Then do it," Lyra said, her voice sharp. "But tell me first, what is this place?" Reyes looked at the glowing screens. His face changed. Not angry, not proud, just tired. "This," he said, "is the truth your world tried to forget." Lyra blinked. "What do you mean?" Reyes stepped closer. "Your planet, Cyrell, wasn't just visited by humans once. It was saved by them. 73 years ago." Lyra's breath caught. "That's not possible. Our history—" "Your history was rewritten," Reyes said softly. "We came when a deadly plague spread across your cities. Your leaders called for help. We answered. Our scientists stayed for months. We lost 40 humans trying to cure your people. But we stopped. The plague," Lyra shook her head. No, we were told the disease burned out on its own." "Of course you were," Reyes said, "because your rulers feared what would happen if your people knew the truth, that humans could be kind, that maybe monsters weren't monsters after all." Lyra couldn't speak. Her world, her entire belief, was crumbling inside her. Reyes pointed to a screen showing a small village on her homeworld. A child ran across the field wearing a medical bracelet. A human doctor smiled in the background. "This boy," Reyes said, "was your cousin, wasn't he? Born during the plague." Lyra stared at the screen. She remembered that field. That child. Her hands trembled. Why would my leaders lie?" Reyes didn't answer. Instead, he opened a drawer and handed her a small data crystal. "Take this. It contains everything: footage, records, names. We never meant to hide it, but we also never forced the truth. We thought, in time, your people would be ready." Lyra clutched the crystal. It felt warm in her hand, like holding a truth she had never imagined. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because," Reyes said, "I think you're already starting to see through the fog." Lyra left the room silently. The next day she wandered the human station, but now she saw everything differently. An insectoid alien learned music from a human pianist. A reptilian child was reading beside a human teacher. Even the machines had personality. Some made jokes, others offered comfort. This wasn't a military base. It was a community. Later that night, Lyra stood on the observation deck. Stars stretched forever in front of her. Behind her, a soft voice said, "You've been quiet." It was Maya, a human researcher, young, kind, and curious. She had been assigned to assist Lyra during her visit. "I saw something," Lyra replied. Something unexpected. Maya smiled gently. You mean the fact that we don't eat babies? Lyra chuckled, surprised. We were told worse. You're not the first, Maya said, sitting beside her. Many species arrive scared. Some even come ready to fight. We don't blame them. Lyra looked at her. How do you keep helping those who hate you? Maya's smile faded a little. Because, she said, we remember what it's like to be alone. Earth was nearly destroyed by our own mistakes long ago. When we survived, we decided if we ever reached the stars, we wouldn't conquer. We'd protect. But you're strong, Lyra said. You could take over. Maya nodded. We could, but power means nothing if it's not shared. A long silence followed. Then Lyra asked, do you think we'll ever stop fearing each other? Maya looked at her with a strange expression. Maybe, but not until the lies die. 2 days later, Lyra stood at the transport dock. It was time to return to Zerel. Reyes handed her a small package. Take this too, he said. A recording from the first contact. Maybe. It will open more eyes. Lyra nodded. As she stepped onto her ship, she felt different. Not just confused, but angry, awakened. How much had been stolen from her people, as her ship flew. Back across the stars, she watched the human station disappear into the blackness. A place she was told would be a nightmare turned out to be the only place that ever felt real. She clutched the data crystal tight. She didn't know it yet, but that small crystal would soon burn an entire empire of lies to the ground. The secret war. The stars looked colder on her way back. Lyra sat alone in her small ship, eyes locked on the crystal Reyes had given her. It rested in her lap like a silent ghost, small, smooth, but heavy with something bigger than truth. History. Not the history she had memorized in school. Not the stories carved in stone across Zeral's monuments. No, the forgotten kind. The buried kind. She hadn't slept since she left the human station. Her mind replayed every image, every word, every quiet kindness she had seen. How could monsters be kind? How could monsters build schools for alien children, give medicine to strangers, and risk their lives for people who feared them? Nothing made sense anymore. But the worst part? Something inside her didn't want to go back. Back on Zerel, the atmosphere felt heavier. Gray skies hung low and the cities buzzed with silence. Tall towers stood like stone soldiers, watching, judging. Even the wind carried suspicion. As Lyra walked through the customs chamber, a security officer scanned her. Purpose of return? Science, Lyra replied. The officer's eyes paused, on her face a moment too long, then nodded. Welcome home. Citizen. It didn't sound like a welcome. That night, in the silence of her apartment, Lyra activated the data crystal. A blue light filled the room. Footage played. At first it showed what she expected. Human doctors landing on alien planets, giving aid, helping rebuild. But then, the files changed. Codename, Operation Ember Wake. She leaned forward. There were images of ships falling from orbit, entire cities burning, and in the middle of it all, not humans, but giant, twisted creatures. Metallic skin, glowing eyes, long, limbs that moved like living wires. They were not from Zerel, not from Earth, not from anywhere known. They were something else. The file described them as the Devourers. Lyra's hands trembled. They had appeared 2 centuries ago, just outside human space machines, but not built. Alive, but not born. No one knew where they came from, no demands, no language. Just destruction. They moved from system to system, wiping out life and feeding on the remains. Humans had been the first to fight back. Not because they were heroes, but because they had no choice. Earth was next. A voice played from the file. An old human admiral. We lost 3 colonies in 8 days. We begged for help. No one came. So we fought alone. We didn't just fight for Earth. We fought for anyone who might be next. Lyra scrolled further. Zerel was one of those systems. The Devourers had set course for it. Her leaders, so proud, so strong, had sent a desperate message to the humans. They begged for protection. Humans responded. They came with fire, ships, blood. They fought the machines in orbit of Zirel, losing hundreds of lives. They stopped the Devourers, and then they were erased from Zirel's history. Lyra's stomach turned. She sat in the dark, surrounded by truths sharper than any weapon. She knew she couldn't stay silent, but speaking was dangerous. Very dangerous. So she reached out, to the underground, a quiet network of thinkers, scientists, and outcasts who questioned the official story. They lived in whispers and shadows. When she showed them the files, some cried. Some laughed like madmen. Some just sat in silence for hours. "We always knew," said a thin man with broken hands. But no one would listen. You brought the proof. Soon, the files began to spread. Quietly. Not to everyone. Just to the right ones. Professors, historians, military veterans who had seen things they weren't allowed to explain. Rumors started growing like cracks in old walls. What if humans didn't attack us? What if they saved us? But the government moved fast. Arrests began. Screens were shut down. 2 of Lyra's contacts disappeared without a trace. Fear spread like smoke. But the spark had been lit, and it would not go out. One evening, a coded message blinked on Lyra's comlink. A single word, survivor. Coordinates followed. She took a risk and went. It led her to the outer edge of the city, near the ruins of an old observatory. Inside, in the cold dust, sat an old alien man in a worn-out uniform. "You were part of the first contact mission?" Lyra asked. He nodded slowly. "I was there, when they came." "The humans?" He smiled. "Yes, and the monsters they fought. I watched them fall from the sky like firebirds, not to take, but to protect." His eyes filled with tears. "They saved us, and we betrayed them. We feared that if our people knew the truth, they would never trust us again. So they erased it," Lyra said bitterly. "No," he whispered. "They didn't erase it. We did." As Lyra left the observatory, her mind was made up. This wasn't just about knowing the truth anymore. This was war. Not between planets, but between lies and truth, and the war had already begun. The broken world Zirel had never looked so unfamiliar. The green sky still stretched over the mountains. The great floating towers still hummed with silent power. The streets were still full of people, but their eyes were empty. They walked with purpose, but not thought. They obeyed, but did not question. They smiled, but not truly. Lyra now saw what she couldn't before, not because the world had changed, but because she had. She stood at the edge of the Capitol, staring at the marble statue of the High Council, carved to look wise and noble. For years, she believed they were protectors. Now, she knew. They were jailers. When Lyra tried to speak out, the silence was instant. She sent messages to the science board. No reply. She requested a meeting with her academy mentors. Request denied. Even her own parents grew cold. "You've been influenced," her mother said quietly. "They warned us about human tricks." "You think I'm lying?" Lyra asked. "I think you're confused. Maybe even sick." Her father didn't speak at all. They closed the door behind her as she left. 2 days later, her public access was revoked, her research license suspended. A quiet warning was left on her console. "You are being watched." She went into hiding, but she was not alone. In a cold storage district deep under the Capitol, rebels moved in the shadows. Not fighters with guns, but scholars, teachers, data runners, people who remembered. They called themselves the Keepers. Of Ember, a woman named Sela, a former minister of culture, led them now. "We tried to spread the truth once," Sela said, "years ago. They burned the libraries, they arrested the poets, they silenced anyone who asked why." Lyra placed the data crystal on the table. "Then maybe it's time to speak again." Louder. Sela smiled. "You've brought fire, Lyra. The kind that burns empires." They worked fast. Using hidden relays, they copied the files. They created holograms, secret data drops, even graffiti codes across city walls that could be scanned to show the truth. Messages like, "They saved us. Monsters do not heal." We were taught to fear the wrong ones. Then came the blackout. On the seventh night, all external signals were shut down. Networks died. Drones stopped mid-air. Even basic comms flickered and vanished. On every public screen, the High Council appeared, 6 figures dressed in light-absorbing robes. The one in the center spoke with a voice altered to hide their identity. "We are under attack. False knowledge is spreading. A disease more dangerous than war. The humans are behind it. They want to divide us. They want to break us from within. We must protect truth, unity, control. Report anyone sharing human information. The punishment is disintegration." Panic followed. Neighbors turned on each other. Streets were empty by day, patrolled by drone watchers at night. And yet, the truth kept spreading, because truth, once awakened, is not easily killed. One night, a message reached Lyra through a hacked signal dot, a voice she hadn't heard since the human station. "This is Captain Reyes. We received your transmission. We're listening. But if we come open, not in secret. Are you ready for that?" Lyra didn't reply for several hours. When she finally answered, her voice was clear. "They've declared war on truth. So yes, come. We need you." Meanwhile, inside the Citadel, the High Council watched her every move. "She is dangerous," one voice said. "No," another answered. "She is necessary. Let the people see what happens to traitors." They prepared a public trap. Days later, Lyra was caught. Or rather, she allowed herself to be. Standing in the center of the great court, surrounded by thousands, she was called a traitor, a corrupted mind, a puppet of the humans. She stood straight, silent, waiting. The sentence was clear. Disintegration at dawn. But dawn never came. Because just before sunrise, the sky opened, and through the clouds, a ship descended, sleek, silver, silent. A human ship, not a warship. But it was not alone. It was followed by hundreds of tiny pods, broadcast drones. They flew across the planet, hacking every screen, every wall, every visor, and then a voice. "We are not your enemies. We are the memory you were denied. We do not come to rule. We come to remind you of what was taken from you." The screens played it all. Operation Emberwake, the war against the Devourers, the healing of Zirel, the sacrifices humans made, and at the center of it all, Lyra's story, the people saw and the world trembled. The human weapon, the fire, didn't fall from the sky. It rose from the people. As the human drones lit up the skies above Zirel, revealing truths long buried, the silence broke across the planet like glass. In every city square, every classroom, every work unit, the same question spread like wildfire. What else have they hidden from us? The High Council tried to fight back. They sent emergency signals. They claimed the footage was fake. They warned of a human invasion. But the footage was too clear. The human voices too real. And then came the breaking point. A single file leaked, marked, classified, weapon H0. The people expected missiles, maybe secret bombs. Instead, it was a book written by a human centuries ago. It was called The Declaration of Rights. Lyra sat in the underground hideout, the file still glowing in front of her. It wasn't war plans. It wasn't tech. It was just words, but each word struck like a blade. All people are born free. Power must come from the will of the governed. Truth cannot be owned. As she read, she finally understood why the council feared the humans. This was the real weapon. Not guns, not fleets, ideas. Sela walked in, holding a small holopad. "The city of Nerix just collapsed," she said. "They tried to arrest a teacher for showing a human speech. The students formed a shield wall around her. The security drones refused to fire." Lyra looked up. "They're losing control." "No, Sela said. They've already lost it. They just don't know it yet. But power never dies quietly. That night, the sky turned red. Not with human ships, but with the Council's last weapon, truth erasers. Artificial storms designed to wipe data from every open system. Libraries caught fire. Memory towers fell. Public records blinked out of existence in seconds. They weren't trying to hide the past anymore. They were trying to erase the present. The rebellion moved underground. Data couriers carried truth in implants under their skin. Children memorized speeches and songs. Old statues were painted with hidden codes. And Lyra became something new. A voice. Not a soldier, not a scientist. A spark. Through pirate signals, she spoke across the planet. You were told to fear humans, but fear is what your rulers use to keep you blind. The real war was never between planets. It was between control and choice. Her voice reached every corner and beyond. One day, she received a secret message, a broken signal from deep space, encrypted in the ancient code of the Devourers, translated into 3 words. We are coming. Panic erupted. People thought the Devourers were gone, destroyed. But Lyra knew better. That's why the humans kept those maps, she told Sela. They weren't planning attacks. They were tracking the threat. The Council, backed into a corner, announced martial law. They used the Devourer warning to seize power again. We must stand together, they said. We must cut the infection of human thought before it kills us all. But it was too late. The people had seen the truth, and the truth refused to die. Captain Reyes contacted Lyra. We've received the Devourer signal too, he said. We're preparing defenses, but we won't intervene unless you ask. Why? She asked. Because we remember what it felt like when no one asked us. Freedom includes the right to fight your own battles. Lyra stood in the dark, thinking. Then wait, she said. We're not done yet. That night, inside the burned-out ruins of the Zirel Central Archive, Lyra found what the Council tried hardest to destroy. A message from the first human envoy, recorded in soft, broken audio. We bring no chains. We bring no kings. We offer one gift, dangerous, wild, and uncontrollable. It is called freedom. Lyra looked into the flickering image of the past and made her choice. 2 days later, a signal beamed from Zirel into open space. To any who hear us, the Devourers are real, and this time, we will not be silent. This time, we fight. The spark, they didn't know who fired first. Maybe it was a frightened soldier. Maybe a rebel who had lost too much. Or maybe it was no one. Maybe it was always going to happen, because no lie lives forever, and no truth rises quietly. It began in Varen, a city built into the cliffs of Zirel's western rim. Once a place of poets and thinkers, now a cage of silence and patrols. A group of students marched through the square, holding signs made of scrap metal. Truth is not treason. We are not afraid of ideas. The Council's black-armored enforcers arrived. They ordered them to disperse. Someone shouted back, "No more orders!" A single plasma bolt lit the air. Someone screamed. And then the cliff shook with thunder, not from weapons, from voices. Varen fell by nightfall, not to war, but to its own people. Enforcers dropped their arms. Machines refused commands. Banners burned. Above the city, a single drone hovered, replaying Lyra's last transmission. This is not a rebellion. This is a remembering. But Lyra wasn't in Varen. She was far below the surface, inside the core vault, where the planet's original data systems were buried under centuries of concrete and denial. It was Sela who found it, an ancient structure sealed off before the first human contact. Untouched, forgotten, and still pulsing. This is pre-council tech, she whispered, built by the ones who ruled before the rewriting. The deeper they went, the stranger it became. Rooms lined with mirrored walls, repeating whispers in languages no longer spoken, symbols of the Devourers etched into the ceilings, but older than any known encounter. "We thought the Devourers arrived 2 centuries ago," Sela said. Lyra touched a panel. A hologram bloomed into light. Devourers, multiple worlds, patterns of destruction, and at the center of the diagram, Zerel marked. "Before the First War even began, we weren't just another target," Lyra said slowly. "We were always part of the design." Meanwhile, the High Council was collapsing, not just politically, but mentally. They had ruled through fear, but now fear had a new name, and it wasn't Lyra, it was the truth. One by one, mid-level officials began defecting. Data runners from within the palace leaked everything: bank accounts, secret votes, the real death counts during the peace years. On UR, the streets people no longer whispered, they sang. Rebel songs based on human poems, coded rhythms that carried maps, messages, coordinates. Truth had become a drumbeat, and Lyra was its pulse. Then the sky screamed. The first Devourer probe arrived. Not a fleet, not a ship, just a sphere, silent, perfect, deadly. It entered orbit above the city of Jareth without warning, hovered for 3 minutes, then sent one message: "We remember your light," and then it was gone. But Jareth wasn't. The entire city disappeared, not burned, not shattered, erased. Panic returned, but this time it was different. Not the blind panic of slaves, the panic of people who now understood what was at stake. Freedom is not safe, but it is worth everything. Captain Reyes sent another transmission. "Our forces are positioned beyond the system. If the Devourers return, we will stand with you, but we will not lead. You have already begun leading yourselves." Lyra replied, "We don't need your armies. We need your stories, your ideas, the weapon that started this all." Reyes nodded. "Then we'll share everything." In the days that followed, human culture poured through the stars like light through broken windows. Children on Zerel read Shakespeare translated into 3 alien dialects. Rebels quoted Rosa Parks over battle. Comms mechanics sang earthworker chants while repairing old transports. Humanity, the real one, not the myth, was no longer a monster. It was a mirror, showing the people of Zerel who they could become. But not everyone wanted the mirror. The Council had one weapon left, a device called the fracture key, hidden beneath the capital, designed to sever the planet's core link to the solar grid. If activated, Zerel would be thrown into blackout and become blind to the stars. "They'd rather live in darkness," Sela said, "than let the people see the light." Lyra stared at the map of the vault tunnels. "Then we go into the dark first." She led the team, a small unit of scholars, rebels, and one ex-soldier who once hunted her. "I thought I was protecting peace," he told her. "Turns out I was just protecting silence." They reached the chamber with minutes to spare. Council guards were already there. What followed wasn't a battle. It was a memory tearing itself free. Shots rang. Screams echoed. Stone cracked. Lyra reached the fracture key. Her hand hovered above the terminal. A guard raised his rifle, eyes wild, and then stopped. He looked at her, saw the fire in her eyes, lowered his weapon, and stepped aside. Lyra placed her hand on the core and shut it down. Outside, the skies of Zerel lit up. The Devourer probe returned. But this time, Zerel did not hide. Satellites blinked alive. Defense towers rose from the earth. The people stood under banners they painted themselves. No leader's face. Just words. Truth lives. Lyra stood in the ruins of the capital, bruised, tired, and unbroken. Children ran past her laughing. Soldiers once loyal to the Council now helped carry food and books. The Devourers would return in force. They all knew that. But Zerel would not face them as victims. They would face them as people who remembered. She thought humans were monsters. She became one of them. They came without sound. No warnings. No demands. Just silence. And then the sky cracked. The Devourers arrived. Not one probe this time, but 9 ships, orbiting Zerel like silent judges. Their shape was unnatural, neither metal nor flesh, their form shifting slowly like oil over broken glass. One by one they spoke. Not with words, but with memory. Cities across the planet were filled with visions. The same vision, the fall of other worlds. Not from weapons, but from hopelessness. That was their real power. They did not burn planets. They erased their meaning. They whispered to the people of Zerel, "You do not matter. Your truth is dust. Freedom is fiction." But this time the people had an answer. In the Resistance control hub, deep beneath the old council's palace, Lyra stood before a large command screen. Beside her, Sela worked quickly, uploading files. Captain Reyes's voice echoed through the room via hologram. "They're here," he said. "We see them," Lyra replied. "We're ready to deploy our fleet," he said, "but we won't fire unless ordered." Lyra turned to him. "No, you'll fight beside us, not for us." Reyes smiled. "Good." The people of Zeril didn't run. They rose. Old city towers became signal boosters. Abandoned transit lines became bunkers. Farming ships were converted into mobile defense turrets. But most important of all, the people had each other. No more orders from above. No more silence. No more forgetting. In the center of the planet, Lyra gave her final broadcast. Not as a leader, not as a soldier, but as someone who had once believed the lie and chose to face the truth. Her voice was clear, calm, and full of fire. "I was told humans were monsters. I was taught to fear their power, their ideas, their freedom. But it was never their weapons we feared. It was their refusal to be controlled. And now we stand where they once stood, not as slaves, but as something dangerous, something wild, something free." The Devourers began their attack, but they didn't fire bombs or lasers. They sent out cognitive storms, waves of despair, illusions of defeat, emotional gravity that turned courage to ash. People fell to their knees, weeping, trembling, forgetting. But then they remembered. One by one, the resistance beacons activated. Recordings of human music filled the skies. Earth's chaos, its hope, its pain. Speeches played over rooftops. Images of Earth's own survival stories blinked on every screen. Zerel answered the despair with history. Not perfect, but defiant. Lyra activated the Core Light Network, the ancient planetary defense system, buried under centuries of lies. A series of glowing towers rose from the oceans, from the deserts, from the shadows of dead cities. They pulsed, not to kill, but to shield memory. Every pulse restored a mind. Every surge reignited belief. The Devourers didn't understand, they never had. They fed on silence, on erased minds, on broken wills. But Zerel had found its voice, and now that voice screamed with everything it had. The battle lasted one full rotation. Human ships arrived, not to dominate, but to support. They flew alongside Zerel's fleet, sharing, shields taking damage, offering words instead of orders. By dawn, 2 Devourer ships fell. The rest retreated, for now. But it wasn't a victory sealed by guns. It was survival born of memory. After the battle, as smoke rose from the horizon and light returned to the sky, Lyra walked through the broken remains of the capital, not as a prisoner, not as a fugitive, but as something else. Children followed her, asking questions. People called her name, not in worship but in gratitude. One elder placed a hand on her shoulder and whispered, "You carry more than Zerel now. You carry the flame." Weeks later, a human envoy arrived. They brought no army, only a small device. A citizenship token. It glowed softly in Lyra's hand. Reyes stood beside her. "You've earned it," he said. "If you want it." She stared at the token. For a moment, she remembered the first day she saw a human, how afraid she was, how lied to she had been, how much she had changed. "Does this make me one of you?" she asked. Reyes smiled. "Only if you choose to be." Lyra looked up at the sky, at the stars, at the future. "No," she said quietly. "I'm not just one of you. I am what you became, when you were brave enough to choose truth over fear. And Then she stepped into the light, not as a Xerelian, not as a human, but as something new, a story that could no longer be erased.